Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Alyx King and Kelly Pretty. It's Tuesday, January the 29th, 2019, 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London and Sydney, Australia. It's good morning there, 8 a.m. How are you doing wherever you are in the world? Thank you for tuning in for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy, where I have been learning how to be humble in the face of technology that doesn't want to work the way I want it to. And I'm happy to see a smile on my face. I'm still smiling.
You have to in
Sometimes,
those situations.
yeah. Sometimes, you know what it is? I'm trying to learn how to receive. I'm trying to learn how to receive the signals, and
Yeah.
sometimes they just don't come through. That's all there is to it. Uh, well, I hardly even have to ask the question, but I can because I can tell the answer. But Alyx, how you doing?
I'm A-okay.
You are you are alive. You are wired today. You are just full of energy, I can tell, which is a good thing. It means you had a good weekend.
What is that? What
This
is
a
that?
this is a monster energy, so it's an energy that has like
Oh,
everything in it, and it's so bad for me, but so good.
See, Kelly, she thinks that if she keeps showing the drink live on the air, she can get Monster to pay us a royalty for it. So that's what she's doing
We should. I drink enough of them.
now.
really? Our
Yeah.
Scottish equivalent is Iron Brew. Have you heard of that before?
It
No,
sounds deadly.
it sounds intense.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's like luminous orange. I'll try. I
Mhm.
can't get one though because I live in England and they don't sell them in England now.
Oh,
They're like really, really crazy. Kind of like Monster, but
yeah.
luminous orange. And only for Scottish people.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, once again, I don't think I have to ask, but Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm
You look
good.
like
I'm
you're
really
wonderful.
good, thank you. Yeah,
You
I'm
look like
great.
you're
How are
excited.
you?
I'm doing much better than I was. I actually did not have a good Sunday. I had a really rough Sunday. I was applying every single process that I know, and I've been climbing back ever since. And they work. I can tell you from experience the last couple of days, the processes work when you apply them. But I had to do all of them. I mean, I was going through my list. So that's how my weekend went. But things are on the improving path right now, and that's the way I'm looking at it, which is the way it
That's
needs to
good.
be. Yeah, yeah, it has to be good that way. So anyway, this is a Q&A, but it's also something where I want to try to include something that I started doing this morning. And I'm not even quite sure how to describe it. Louis D'Souza, who does the Monday morning podcast with me, at the end of the show on Monday, asked the audience to bring any internet quotes or meme quotes, that kind of thing, to the next show. I thought that was a really interesting idea because what he wants to do is he wants to take them and then kind of reinterpret them from an LOA perspective, from a deliberate creator perspective,
Hmm.
um, which is a good idea because some of the memes that are out there, they can have like, a sarcastic side to them or kind of a twisted side or whatever, and
Yeah.
not necessarily all that friendly. So how about, doing an exercise of turning them into, well, what would we want them to say from an LOA perspective? So
Hmm.
gives us one more conversation piece. But we're still going to do Q&A. So anyone who has a question they want us to address, please do feel free if you're listening to the live stream to plug them in. I'm seeing comments already popping in there, so I know people are paying attention and saying hello and basically sharing the fact that they're listening to their daily dose of happy. So that's a good thing. Um, Now, I have to admit, I have gone through a lot of questions of my own today, so I'm going to lean on you guys pretty heavily. And I happen to know a little birdie told me that Alyx has the first question today.
I do. So what happened was I was scrolling through Law of Attraction Change My Life group, and I saw someone had posted, does Law of Attraction work if you don't believe in God? And I
Oh,
thought that
yeah.
was a
Mm.
very interesting question.
They got a lot of answers too. I saw that question. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
think I
did.
think there was 100 comments in about an hour. It was flying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing like a little controversy to get a lot of people involved, you know? It's dip your foot into
Exactly.
that contrast again. That's what that person did. Well, I don't think they dipped the foot in. They jumped in down to the neck. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they
it
did.
was.
Yep. Dove right into the deep end.
So speaking of diving into the deep end, who wants to take a first swing at this one? Because there's a little bit of controversial nature to this.
Well, it was my question, so you guys get to answer.
First back pass for the day. Okay, so all right, I'll go for it then. I'll tell you what my answer is. My answer is it doesn't really matter what you call anything. I mean, people have different ideas about what God is. Some of us say that God is the same thing as source energy. I'm one of those. Other people say that God is the creator of all and we're under God. And everybody has different views. Some people don't believe in God at all. Some people are agnostic about God. Some people don't care one way or the other. They're the ones who are smart enough to ignore the controversy. So a lot of it depends on what your definitions are and what your belief structure is. For me, the only thing that I ever get a little bit interested and excited about answering something like that is if I see somebody taking a really firm stance that is kind of exclusive, like you have to believe this way. And that's honestly a opportunity for me to say, well, there is also this other viewpoint.
Right.
A lot, But is there an equivalence? Sure, there's an equivalence. Do you have to believe? I like to think of it this way. Imagine somebody who is from a relatively primitive culture here on Earth, somebody who lives out in the bush, so to speak, and they don't have any contact with, certainly with your typical citified civilization. And they walk into a room that has a light switch, and they don't know anything about electricity. Can they turn on the light? Well, yeah, all you have to do is just flip the light switch. You don't have to understand electricity in order to flip on the light switch.
Yeah.
So if you don't need to understand electricity in order to flip on a light switch, why do you have to believe in God in order to make the law of attraction work? That's the way I look at it.
I like it.
Amazing.
That was a great answer. Good answer. Good answer.
I mean, it's kind of like saying, do you believe in gravity? It doesn't matter whether you believe in gravity. You jump off of a cliff, you're going to fall to the ground. I don't care what you call it. Now that I've thoroughly trashed the question, Kelly, what's your answer?
I know. I don't even know what to say now after that one. Yeah, like I personally think it doesn't matter what you believe either. So similar to what you were saying, Walt, like it's all down to like how you use the law of attraction. Like what I would say though is I was an atheist before I knew about the law of attraction. And when you start seeing the way that the law of attraction works, or in ways that you're using the law of attraction either to create good things or create bad things in your life, then I would question how many people would not start to think, hold on, what else is going on here? And that doesn't mean that they need to believe in God, for instance, but much like you, I believe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, it's a power that's bigger than ourselves, right? And I think it's gonna open up questions after that as to what else is happening, what else is going on. There's not many people in the world, I think, that would see the way the law of attraction works and not question the bigger picture, at least question it anyway. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
No, hey, the nice thing about a question like that, it's so heavily dependent upon belief that any answer is acceptable. So
Yeah.
great answer.
Yeah.
Great answer, How about you, Alex? What's your answer? I mean, it is your question. You've had time to think about it.
I did not have time to think about it, actually.
Oh, really? Well, another opportunity lost.
I agree with what Walt said. I think that it doesn't matter what you believe in. I also believe what Kelly said. As long as you believe in something bigger than yourself, then law of attraction is everything. So it all applies.
I'm reminded of a novel by the science fiction author Robert Heinlein, who I used to read a lot of. I read almost all of his works, and there was one book called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," which is a really rough-sounding title, but it's actually a pretty cool book. Anyway, at one point in the book, one of the main protagonists very briefly makes reference to the question of God.
Mm.
And his comment about God is, I don't know who's in charge. I'm just pleased that he doesn't stop cranking, which I thought was
I like it.
but I also say that a little tongue in cheek too, because there is a word that we use to discuss this kind of thing that I think is a little misleading. And I don't think we
Mm,
even realize how misleading it is. We often talk about a higher power.
mhm,
And there are two possible meanings here. And you talk to
mhm.
different people, you're gonna get different reactions on which meaning applies. One meaning is higher, meaning further up, like
Yeah.
physically in a higher place. The
Mhm,
other is a higher vibration, meaning a faster vibration. So vibrating at a faster rate is higher.
mhm.
And the two aren't necessarily the same, depending on who you
Right.
talk to, you know?
Mhm,
So you almost have to kind of get the definitions done before you can even answer the question. What do you mean by a higher power? Do you mean a power that vibrates at a faster rate? Or do
mhm,
you think of it as a power who is above you and you're below that power?
mhm.
Not necessarily the same thing.
But it can be.
Can be, sure.
Mhm.
Yep.
Depending on what you believe.
Depending on what you believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I actually don't believe that I'm down here and that there's a power up there. That doesn't fit my
Uh-uh.
belief pattern. Lots of people do, but that's not
Mhm,
my belief pattern. I like what Neville Goddard had to say about this. He expressed it in a rather extreme form, and I can't remember the exact quote, but the gist of it is he doesn't want people to think in terms of a master. He rejects the idea,
mhm,
for instance, of an ascended master. And his reason is if there is an ascended master and you're not the ascended master, then you're the slave. You're in the slave position compared to the
mhm.
master, which I thought was,
Right.
it's a valid point. I mean, it's an extreme way of expressing the use of the word master, but it's a valid point. If they're up there, it's like what happened with my wife when she was in, she went to a workshop when she was still in training to become a psychotherapist many years ago. And at
Mhm,
the workshop, she heard from this teacher who was just blowing her mind at how good this teacher was. He was teaching her all kinds of wonderful stuff. She was just so impressed with him. And toward the end of the workshop, she went up to introduce herself and thank him for everything he was doing and saying that he was just amazing. And his response to her was, "Well, if I'm amazing, what does that make you?" And she
mm.
thought really quickly and she said, "Well, I'm amazing in training." I thought he
I like that.
But then again, he made a good point. I mean, what do you do? What are you doing if you're saying that the teacher is so far up above you? What are you doing to yourself? You're setting yourself down as being inferior, and that's
Mm.
really not a great way to become a deliberate creator, I don't think.
That's going to be my new Facebook hashtag, amazing in training.
Amazing and true. I love it.
I'm going to
I
start
love
a
Love
trend.
it. Love it.
Well, I have to say, Alex, you blew us away with the first question of the day. I'm not sure if we can even come close to topping it, but maybe we can come up with some that are relatively in the same ballpark of
Talk
amazing.
amongst yourselves.
We'll talk amongst ourselves. First of all, I'll check to see if there's anybody who has put in any questions. I think we just blew them away with the topic, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's been making some interesting comments. Didi asked, I saw that question and wondered if she means that there is no God. And yeah, well, it depends on which way you look at the question, really. It could be either
Yeah.
way. She was kind of open-ended about it, so it could really
Yeah.
be. Do you recall anything in the wording that gave you a clue one way or the other, Alex?
I felt like she was asking from an atheist point of view. That's how I received it.
You thought so? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't really see any other questions. I could be missing one. I'm trying to scroll through, but I don't really see anything that people are raising. So, okay, it's down to you and me, Kelly. We got to come up with the next question that we're going to discuss here. So let me see. Do you have
I've
anything
got
in mind?
one. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got one. This has been coming up quite a lot in recent trainings that I do with clients and group programs and things like that. So,
Ah,
um, one of the questions is that I've got is if you have people in your life that are really negative and don't believe in the law of attraction, and they don't believe in your journey, how do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if it's your family.
I'm going to give the cheeky answer and say I'm going to send it to one of our listeners, Paula, who has the exact situation. And just in the last week to 10 days, the person who didn't believe, her husband manifested a new job for himself and was amazed that he did it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word of the day. Today's word is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a question that actually comes up in all seriousness in a lot of people's lives because, I mean, I look at the population here in the United States, for instance. And you know how you can use Facebook like you're going to do some advertising. You can actually find out, how much interest there is in a topic. And here in the U.S., something like 15% of the population have expressed an interest, in liking in some way the topic, the law of attraction.
Wow, that's a huge amount.
Yeah, it's a large number, isn't it? And yet, that
Yeah.
also means that 85% of the population does not feel that way. So that means
Right.
5 out of 6 are shaking their heads saying you're full of crap.
Yeah, but in the UK, it would be so much lower than that.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
so,
Actually, I
so
looked it
low.
up. It was like 4 or 5%, something like that in the UK.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But it just underlines the point. Almost anywhere that you look in the world, Western world or anywhere in the world, you're going to find an overwhelming number of people who don't buy into it. So, first question is, well, how do you talk about it?
Mhm.
And coming into it knowing that you're going to be in the minority. And second of all, how do you respond when somebody attacks you on it? And the interesting thing from my perspective is Abraham explains this. They don't actually explain it specifically the way we're talking about it here, but
Uh-huh.
it's always the same answer. Abraham is so cool. I loved it. I loved the one episode, the one workshop where they said, "We're here to answer every question. We will answer every question here, just so long as you understand it's always the same answer." And that's great. That's fabulous. Because the answer is always the same. It's what you focus on. It's what you choose to think about. So
Mhm.
if you have a family member who is, let's say it's really a rough situation. Let's say it's a family member who is harassing you about it, teasing the hell out of you, abusing you, just treating you abominably and so forth, all because you have this crazy belief in this thing called the law of attraction.
Mhm.
Well, you still get to decide how you're going to react to it. You still get to decide on what you're going to focus on. And if you continue to
Yeah.
focus on the way he's abusing you or she's abusing you or treating you badly or mocking you or ridiculing you, well, you're probably going to get more of it. On the other hand, if you refuse to focus on that and focus on other stuff instead, the vibration doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
It just doesn't work. I mean, they can
Right.
try. And I learned that lesson actually pretty early with bullies in school.
Mhm.
Bullying only works when the bullies get attention.
Right.
It fails entirely when there's nobody to pay attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why
So
nobody
don't pay
gets
attention.
bullied in private. Like, who does that? You get bullied
Pretty
with an
rare.
audience.
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
It is possible, but yeah, it's like one in
Yeah.
a million. Pretty unusual. Now
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that it's easy. I mean, certainly if you're sensitized to the way somebody else is mistreating you on the topic, that can be hard. That can be really
Mhm.
hard. On the other hand, kind of an opportunity too. It's an
Mhm.
opportunity to practice. Like, okay, well, I didn't really want this situation, but it's here. And it's a great opportunity to grow and a great opportunity to learn how to put up a boundary.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what I learned to do. Maybe I learned to put up the boundary.
Hmm.
I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
I'm reminded of a certain situation. It's not as extreme as like I'm being bullied against law of attraction, but I do have someone in my life who doesn't believe in it, but still
Mhm.
listens to the podcast because he supports me like that.
No,
So
cool.
yeah. So he's like he had said to me one time, like, he's like, "Is it a cult?" He's like, "You can tell me if it's cult." I was like, I
Well, see,
was
the
like,
problem is we didn't offer him any Kool-Aid. That's the problem. That's
well, I offered him Jello, but it's not the same thing. But yeah, so yeah, he's like he's just in such disbelief. He's like, no, I don't know. See see it happening like that. It doesn't really work. And I'm like, I try to explain, things in my life that I've manifested. And he's like, but wouldn't those things have happened anyway? And I was like, who knows, dude? Who knows? So
Well,
sometimes
actually,
you just
he raises
can't.
a good
You just
point. He raises
yeah.
a really good point. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just got to get
No,
in
go
on
ahead.
it because it's really good. Wouldn't have happened anyway. And the only thing that I want to point out about that particular topic, that particular
Hmm.
comment is, of course it's going to happen anyway. Everything happens anyway because everything is touched by the law of attraction. See, we tend to
Mm,
think about the law of attraction as if it's some sort of a magic wand. You whip your magic wand out and poof, all of a sudden this amazing things happens. That's not what law
yeah.
of attraction is.
No.
Law of attraction happen everything that's in your life, friend of Alex, everything in your life you attracted to you. Now you don't
Yeah.
have if you don't want to think about it that way, you don't have to. But literally, a case can be made that you attracted all of it. Even if you went over and you picked it up off of a table, you still attracted it.
Yep. And that's what I tried to explain, but he's like, nah. But he's again
Okay.
also an atheist, so I don't know if that goes hand in hand, but today it does.
It does if it does. I mean,
Yeah.
the one thing that I have learned most about this thing, and this touches on Kelly's question in a big way, is no matter who you're talking about,
Mhm.
you can't talk them into this stuff. You
No.
can't convert them. You can't be an evangelist and get anywhere. You're only going to make yourself frustrated in the process. The only
Yeah.
time that somebody's going to accept this stuff is when they're ready to accept it. And until
Hmm.
that happens, not much you can do about it. You just, wish them well and think pleasant thoughts about them and feel good for them and just send them on their way saying, hey, have a good time.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Yes.
You just really can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
But for
I
me,
agree. I think the acceptance piece is huge. So for me,
Mhm.
like I feel like when people go and speak to their family and their friends about it and they're not in their own power, so they may be like questioning and doubting it themselves, that's when people would actually like show you that back as something that is a belief that maybe you're not 100% sure in. So a lot of the
yeah.
time when people doubt us, it's actually because we're doubting ourselves and they're mirroring those insecurities that we have in ourselves. So they're mirroring the beliefs that we need to work on in ourselves.
Hmm.
And when we learn to like accept them for the journey that they're on, but also accept ourselves and really like stand in our power of like, yeah, this is how I truly feel, and I totally know that this is my truth. That's when I feel like people's perceptions of you shift.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yes.
So I've seen that happen with like my mom and stuff, for instance.
Hmm.
With what kind of result?
Um, it was probably more me accepting her, I think, for her, the journey that she's on, and thinking she's never going to understand me. And I went to Tony Robbins' UPW, and I realized I was holding on to this really long belief. Did I tell this story before about her? And she had like a scare, like a cancer scare. Did I
Oh,
tell
I
yeah,
that
didn't
yeah.
hear it.
before?
Okay. Yeah, tell
Yeah,
it anyway, Alex, but yeah.
yeah, like basically, I was kind of I had this belief that was holding me back that my mom was never going to understand me. And she had like this, like, the day that I moved away, she ended up going into hospital, and I moved from Scotland to England, and she ended up in hospital and had a cancer scare. And this went on. She was in and out of hospital and for like about 6 months. And then I went to Tony Robbins' UPW. I went in and I realized I was holding on to this massive belief and not actually accepting her for where she was at on her journey and loving her for who she is, and just basically a huge acceptance piece. And I chose to shift that belief and go, okay, well now my new story is that I love my mom exactly the way she is, and she's
Mhm.
gonna come round in her own time and really change that story. And I walked out of UPW on a lunch break. I checked my phone, and she'd written on me a text saying results have come back all clear.
Oh, how
Yay.
Yeah, but it just shows you like the acceptance piece is so huge, because
Hmm.
that shift in energy, that wasn't like a coincidence that suddenly just in that moment, the whole 6 month period where I shifted my beliefs, I, basically was like forgiving myself and forgiving her. And then after that, Yeah, it was amazing.
I like
Fantastic.
that story.
I'd
Thank
forgotten
you.
that part of the story. I'm glad you retold it then, just because I'd forgotten that part where everything came back all clear.
Yeah, so I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's very
the
good.
energy of acceptance.
Yep. Nasha's collected a couple of questions for us to address. And the first one is from Jeff. He's asking, what do you do when you're in your highest vibration? Good
Mm,
question.
Bask in it.
Bask in
really good.
Bask in your glow.
Um, any others, Alex?
Let me see. Besides basking, I mean, just spread the love. Just spread that vibration. Spread it around. Be like, because like when I'm having a good day, I like to call my friends and be like, "How was your day? How are you doing? This is what's going on with me," And I like to spread the happiness. I like to be a beacon of light, for other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Okay, that's good. How about you, Kelly?
Um, what do I do when I'm in my highest vibration? Take advantage of it. I like to do action when I'm in my highest vibration.
Yes.
Hmm.
Um, so I really go into action mode. I also will tend to meditate as well to try and
Hmm.
get clarity on things and visualizations. And I'll use that moment to try and manifest as many good things into my life as possible when I'm in that high vibration.
Hmm.
Definitely, I agree with you. The way I phrase it is I milk it. I milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I want to keep experiencing the glow of it. Ah, this feels so good. And just
Yeah.
keep playing it. Because, yeah, when something like that happens, that's when you want to be and stay in that place. Because that's what they call in the vortex. When you're in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that's when all the lights turn green. That's when all the parking places become available. That's when the money starts coming in.
Exactly.
That's where all the good things happen. Like, yeah, yeah, more, more, more.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, I've heard this off a few people actually, but one of the best things to do when you're in that state is say, how can this get any better? Because a lot of the time we love milking it, we love enjoying it, and then we kind of
Mhm.
assume that we're going to go back to normal or our vibration is going to go lower, and it's just an assumption, right? So when you ask
Mhm.
yourself that question when you're in a high vibrational state, how does this get any better? You reach a new level. You need to reach a new level of good, I guess.
That's
Mhm.
a great point. I like that. That
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm
that's the
not
best
gonna.
time to climb up. I mean, if you're gonna climb up, you might as well do it then. That's the best time.
Right?
Yeah, I I honestly I can't take credit for that one. I've heard that off a couple
Oh,
of.
go
I heard
ahead.
it off. No, I heard it off Michael Beckwith the other day. I heard it off
Oh,
him, and
okay.
I heard it off another girl as well called Peta Kelly. I think I spoke about her before. So yeah, I'm not taking credit for that one, but it is a good one.
It's really good. Yeah. And then Dee Dee asked the question about the question that you had raised, Alex, that you'd seen in Facebook. She says,
Mhm.
she's asking if that girl is equating God with religion.
Hmm. That's an interesting take.
That's quite the possibility, actually, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people equate God with religion. In fact,
Right.
not so much equate, but associate.
Yeah.
There is one true God, and it's whatever my religion says it is.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of that today in the world. A whole lot of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
behave that way. So
Mhm.
maybe that's what she had in mind. But was it she
Maybe.
or he? I can't
I
remember.
think it was a she. I don't remember looking to see who it was. I just remember the
Okay.
question. But
Yeah.
I feel like it was a she. I don't know why.
So I don't know if we have any other answers about is she equating God with religion, but any other thoughts?
No, I don't feel like that's where the question was coming from, but everybody interprets things in their own way. So Dee Dee could be right. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Let's see. Oh, Dee Dee also likes your comment, Kelly, about how can this get any better? She's liking that a lot.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Dee.
And Jeff says he's headed to the gym right after this. Okay, that's good.
basking your glow.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring up one of the memes that I discussed this morning and see what you guys think about it.
Oh, Oakley dokley.
This is one of the themes that I was discussing this morning that shows up in a lot of the popular memes that end up on Facebook and other places online is the element of sarcasm. Sarcasm plays a large role in a lot of the humor that you see. And one of the best examples of that, there's a whole series of memes that are all surrounding the idea of, but it's none of my business. So, something, and then the description will say, well, such and such is happening. It really shouldn't happen that way, but it's none of my business.
None of my business, though.
Yeah. So my question is, what do you think of that meme? What do you think of it, and would you change it?
Are you talking about the one where Kermit the Frog is sipping his tea?
Well, that's one of the kinds. There are actually a few of them that are out there like that, but that's one of them. Yeah.
Those are my favorite.
You like those? Okay.
I love those. I'm sorry. I'm like visualizing it, so I'm laughing. What was the question?
Sorry. The question is, what do you think of it? I mean, do you like those kinds of things? Do you think that the sarcastic memes are a good thing? Do you think there's a problem with them?
Yeah, everybody needs a little humor in their life.
Okay.
And it's definitely, a lot of us should be minding our own business. So it's definitely appropriate and making a good point in a hilarious way. So I agree with it.
Okay. How about you, Kelly?
Well, I don't really know what, excuse me. I don't really know what memes you're referring to be honest. But
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because my partner and I literally had a bit of what do you call it? Yeah, it was basically an argument about humor the other day, believe it or not, right? And
Okay.
It's because I feel really like quite strongly about the things that we put into our minds in terms of like TV and magazines and films. They end up becoming our consciousness, part of our consciousness. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you're going to watch a murder film, you're going to turn into a murderer. But like, it's not very good for your vibration and your energy, I don't think. And I'm really conscious of what I let into my mind. And he likes to watch this really sarcastic. British humor is obviously one of the most sarcastic humors ever. And he likes to put this like really sarcastic thing on the radio, and loads of it right now, when we're in the car, and loads of it's about Brexit at the moment. And God, I am literally like up to here with Brexit chat. I can't deal with it anymore. I don't want to have to think about it. All they do is talk about the job losses and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not wanting to put that into my energy or my consciousness. So, we had like a bit of a tiff because I was like, I don't want to listen to this, and he wanted to listen to it. And I feel kind of like humor is a really important thing, and it's so important to have fun and laughter. But I think that you also have to be quite careful with what it is that you're laughing at, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And
but he thinks I'm really boring, like when I say that. He's like, oh, come on, it's just a joke. I'm like, yeah, I know.
There's a rule I always followed throughout my life that a lot of people disagreed with, and I suspect he would probably disagree also. But my rule is if the person who the joke is on isn't laughing, then it's not funny. And I follow that as a pretty rigorous thing. So if I see somebody being picked on, in a humorous way, a sarcastic way, and they're not laughing at it, I don't think it's funny. Even if it's somebody I don't like, even if it's somebody who has said things that I really don't appreciate very much, I just don't find it to be funny. But more importantly, the big comment I made this morning about it is when you're focusing on something that's sarcastic, it's kind of like a lot of the entertainment that's on television these days. So much of it is about situations with people, they're often comedy situations, where there are certain protagonists who are doing certain things and they're highly dysfunctional, or they're very violent, or they're engaging in various kinds of antisocial behaviors for the purpose of making the viewer think that by comparison his life isn't so bad. And so you can either laugh at it, look at it, or you can feel better about yourself. And on the surface, that sounds like a good idea. But there is a problem with it. The problem is you're always making yourself feel a little bit better than worse. And that actually is not terribly productive. I mean, if you're going
Yeah.
for a little bit better, it's got to be a little bit better than where you are right now. So
Right.
stepping down to go up is not really going up, that's going down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's so
we have
true.
to kind of remember that. Whenever sarcasm is one of those tricky things, and I used to engage in it a lot.
So did
Sometimes
I.
now, but I tried to stay away from it. Sometimes I fail. But
Oh, I
anyway,
fail horribly. I speak, I am fluent in sarcasm, so.
well, if we need a translator, now we know where to go. Uh,
Yeah.
but seriously, I mean, you can get too much into sarcasm, and I I remember noticing after many many years and starting to question whether or not sarcasm was actually a good idea. I remember noticing what my mood was every time that I laughed at something sarcastic or made a joke about something sarcastic. And
Mhm.
I found that my mood wasn't all that great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. And
Mhm.
if this is what made me think of the first point that I made. If it was a particularly low kind of point, like a low humor kind of a thing, going way down actually felt worse. Felt a
Mhm.
lot worse. So I asked myself, in any situation where there's sarcasm, how's the sarcasm making me feel? Because if it's not making me feel good, I'm done with it.
Mhm. Now, see, that's
Yeah.
hard for me because with Asperger's, I don't have empathy. Like that part of my brain just doesn't fire off. So when I make a joke, whether it's never meant to be mean spirited, but I guess it
Mhm.
can be taken that way, and I don't get the fact that it's mean spirited. So some people are like, and some people are like, ah ha ha. So I never know.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's
But, but
so
how's
it's
it, but
hard.
how's it feel to you? Do you feel anything about it?
I don't feel anything about it.
Nothing at all.
No,
Okay.
it's hilarious. That's it.
So it's like okay. So you're feeling that it's funny. You see,
Yeah,
you're feeling the humor of it, and
yeah,
that's an uplifting feeling for you.
right.
Okay. So in your case, that does sound like it's helpful. As long as
Hmm.
it gives you to a better feeling place, then it's working.
Yeah, but it's sometimes it's only for me though. So everybody else in the room, it's like, you know what? And
So
then
what
it
do you
gets half of
do?
the. Usually, I have my mom by my side, and she's like my barometer, and she'll tap me on the shoulder and go,
No.
and I'm, oh, okay, my bad. Sorry, everybody. Let me retract
Oh.
my last statement.
So you have a walking sensor. That's pretty handy, actually.
Yeah. Years of practice.
Practice.
Had me around for 35 years, so now she knows. Listen, she doesn't understand that that's not funny, so you got to let her know right off the bat whether you're enjoying it or not.
I just want to know why Chloe isn't trained for this. She's a service dog. Why isn't she trained to detect inappropriate sarcasm?
She hates all my jokes. Let me tell you, she hates all my jokes. Like I'll be like laughing so hard I'm snorting, and she's just like, like really? You're not that funny though. And I'm like, but Chloe, you don't understand.
Yeah, but that's always the sign of death. The moment you have to explain a joke is the moment the joke is dead.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like the people that are like, see what I did there? And I'm like, okay, but now you just ruined
You just ruined it, right?
it.
Oh, that's funny. So let's see. I'm still not seeing any big questions coming through here. I think maybe people are just laughing too much, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. Uh, well, Paula has something here. Let's see. What's Paula saying? Let me do a little copy and paste here. I don't know what it is. For whatever reason, the type on Facebook I just have trouble seeing, so I like to paste it into my little oh, I think I knocked out my camera. Let's try that again.
Yeah, you did.
Yep, okay. So I try to paste it into my little text reader. It makes it easier to see it. So, okay, Paula says people too often say something negative, cutting and sarcastic. And then they say, well, I'm only joking. You can't take a joke, can you? When really they are being the furthest thing from funny and actually being negative or nasty, which is a good point.
Hmm.
So how do you know? I mean, you run into that regularly, Alex. You just admitted it's like that's a kind of a not a sore point, but it's a difficult point for you because you aren't really sure when you've gone over the line.
Right. Hmm.
So I'll go to Kelly instead because you don't know the answer. So Kelly, what do you do? How do you go too far?
Um, well, I'm not as sarcastic as I used to be, I don't think. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I guess it depends really. Like a lot of the time, I think people don't mean to hurt other people's feelings when they're being
Hmm.
sarcastic. And also it's about like looking at if someone's sarcastic to me, for instance, and then that really upsets me, then I look at the reasons why it's upsetting me because that's triggered something in me that has,
Hmm.
you know, gotten upset for a reason. So it's about like looking at actually why does that hurt so much? Because if you're, for instance, you've done a lot of self-love work and things like that, then someone saying something like that should just bounce off you. So if it's really going in and being really offensive, it's like looking at, okay, why is that affecting me so much? Because we can't take responsibility for other people. We can only take responsibility for ourselves in the way that we react to those things, right? So,
Hmm.
um, like my brother actually, he messaged me the other week because he said something to someone and he really upset them and he was being sarcastic and he is very sarcastic in his humor. And I said, oh, well, that he told me what he said about to this girl. And I said, that is quite hurtful. Like, I wouldn't say something like that. He's like, it was totally harmless. I only meant it as a joke. Um, but you could tell he felt really, really bad about it. So sometimes when people are being sarcastic, I don't think they necessarily mean it. They maybe just say it as an off the cuff remark and then don't
Hmm.
actually mean to hurt people's feelings. But yeah, I guess it's just about being conscious from both sides. Like, is this going to hurt that other person's feelings? And then if it does, if you're the person that's getting the sarcasm thrown towards you, then maybe looking at why did that hurt me so much? Um, yeah, hopefully that helps. I think sarcasm is dangerous when you're being sarcastic towards yourself all the time.
Mm.
So to
Hmm.
give you an example, like I have this amazing client. I love her to bits, but when we first started working together for around, well, her whole life for the last 20 years, all she's ever done is be sarcastic and put herself down to as a barrier, right? And it's
Hmm.
like she uses humor as her kind of barrier. And I used to do it when I was in my kind of late teens, early 20s. I was a butt of everyone's joke and I didn't mind that. That was my place I was comfortable in. I was comfortable putting myself down to get laughs off people. But
Right there.
actually over time, that I realized was completely really affecting
Unhealthy.
myself. Yeah, it was really, really upsetting my
Hmm.
confidence in self, my self-love, my self-worth. And by the time I got to my mid 20s, I was like, no, actually, I've had enough of it. Anyone who wants to slag me off, we call it slagging off in the UK, but anyone who wants to be sarcastic towards me and put me down isn't
Hmm.
worth being in my life because I knew what repercussions that was having on my self-confidence, but also um, from a law of attraction perspective, it was just creating more of those feelings in myself.
Hmm.
Good point. What we often think about this question in terms of whether or not we're hurting somebody else, and yet at the same time we all recognize that you really can't hurt somebody else. They're the only ones who can take it whatever way they take it. So it's one
Mm,
of those catch-22 things. And I remember when I was first trying to wrestle with my own sarcasm and trying to decide did I want to leave it behind or was I want to keep going with it. And it's not a decision I came to right away. I kind of worked into it over time, including
Hmm.
doing the podcast. I finally came to the realization of why it was I wanted to get away from sarcasm. And believe it or not, it was not because I wanted to stop hurting people. It was rather because I learned that it was actually funnier to tell stuff, to talk about funny stuff, to say funny things that wasn't sarcastic, that
Hmm.
actually built somebody up, you know? So for instance, like when you said that you were good at translating this stuff, I said, "Oh, great, you could be the group translator." That's not tearing you down. It's just playing up what you
Yeah.
said, you know?
Right.
And that was fun and was funny.
Yeah.
And there was no, I didn't even have to worry about whether you're going to feel hurt with that because you weren't feeling hurt. You was making it really clear you weren't going to be hurt by something.
Right.
There was no sarcasm at all involved. There was nothing snarky about it.
Mhm.
And the more I looked at it that way, the more I realized I actually don't need to be snarky.
Mhm.
I really don't need it anymore. I mean, sometimes I still do, but not nearly like I used to. It's so much more fun to find humor that actually builds somebody up. Not the
Mhm.
way we normally think about humor, but the more I'm learning how to do it, the more I'm realizing it's a lot more fun. And you get more
Hmm.
laughs, which is even better.
I had an incident this summer with my brother actually, and he had just on the group chat decided to tell us that he was getting married. So I wanted to
Oh,
contact the girl. Yeah, I know, right? Like, hey, by
oh,
the
by the
way,
way.
yeah. So I wanted to contact the girl and say, introduce myself, say I'm DQ's sister, blah blah blah, and she had screenshotted the message to him and said, "Oh, your sister's really sweet, da 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 da," and he said, "Yeah, she's really weird." And then screenshotted that message to us on the group chat. And I took offense. I was like, I was over here being nice, extending an olive branch over, and now you're calling me weird behind my back. Like, I was so hurt. I was so upset for like 3 days. I didn't come out of my room. My mother was like, okay, now I have to say something to him because that was inappropriate. But then it was like the way he's like, if he had said it to me in person, just saying, "Oh, she's so weird." Like, I don't know. I don't think I would have taken it the same. I don't think I would have been as hurt because he was just saying it off the cuff, like, "You're mad weird. Like, go do something." But the way it was just because it was in a text, it was like, "Oh, is that how you talk about me when I'm not around? Like, really?" So I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was sarcastic. We never talked about it. We just let it roll and kept moving. But yeah, I was upset. So sarcasm can go the wrong
That
way.
is interesting. That's an interesting story that you told because
Hmm.
you very graphically and beautifully described how you chose to feel something about one approach, but not feel it about another approach. Like you
Hmm.
said, if it had been a
Yeah.
conversation, you would have chosen to feel differently about it. And that's really an
Yeah,
interesting
I just feel like it would have came off different. Like, that's just how we talk. Like, oh, she's mad weird. But not I felt like in the sense he was taking personal attacks on my mental status. That's how I
thing.
felt. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, taking my issues and being like, she's not all there, in that type of way. That's how I felt that he was going. So that's why mainly I got offended.
Mm. Yeah. But the point is, you chose to be offended. That's what's so interesting to me. Under one circumstance, you would not have chosen
Yeah,
to be offended. In another circumstance, you would have chosen to be offended.
right.
It
It's
all
all in
takes
the
on your,
delivery.
yeah, it's all, all in the delivery, right? It's all your fault.
Yeah.
It just speaks to me about how, boy, I don't want to use the word I was just thinking of because it sounds wrong. Well, I'll say it anyway. Our minds can kind of twist around. We,
Mhm.
we, we can find ways to justify anything we want to justify.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what it is. We're really
yeah,
good at that.
yeah.
So we're trying to answer these blanket questions about, well, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? And instantly I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what's the circumstance? Because there are like five different circumstances I can think of that are
Right.
associated with that. Which one was yours?
Like we have to come to a conclusion with the conversation.
Yeah, right. This stuff can get really confusing. Uh,
It can. But I do have a rule that, like, if I'm gonna make jokes about someone, I do have a one rule, and it's never make fun of something that the person can't help.
hmm,
So, like, I would never make fun of a fat person. I would never, like, me and my friend go back and forth, and we're making jokes about each other all the time and he's always making fun of my tooth gap and calling me Michael Strahan. And I'm like, listen, you shouldn't make, yeah, like we'll be on video chat, and I get real close to the camera, and he's like, all right, Michael Strahan, back up. So, so I'm always like, listen, you're not supposed to make fun of things that people can't help, so don't do that. But that's just my personal rule. So I don't know. He obviously doesn't listen to me. So,
Well, he obviously doesn't know my rule either. If the person you're making the joke on isn't laughing, it isn't funny. He thinks it's funny anyway. He doesn't care.
Well, I don't help the situation because I'm so quick on my toes. I'll be like, listen, okay, with your Edelman beard, I don't even want to hear what you have to say. So,
So if you've been sarcastic too, just be sarcastic back. That's the rule then. Okay, I got it.
that's how it is. At least that's how our relationship is.
Okay.
I don't know if I would do that with a perfect stranger. Like,
Probably not. No.
yeah. Although, if I was on stage and it was a heckler, I probably would. I would definitely do that.
I can see Kelly over there listening to us and saying to myself, how on earth did I get onto this podcast? This is insane. And she's wondering, when is she going to get a client that's going to have this kind of strange makeup, and what the heck is she going to say to this client? She has no idea, right?
I know. I'm like, no, I'm just like listening with intent. Yeah, I'm just like interested. It's interesting, definitely.
Actually, I think
Interesting is definitely the word.
we're reinforcing the idea that all Brits know, which is that Americans are crazy. We just are.
Facts. Facts.
So are British people. I ate like the biggest bowl of pasta before I came on this, because obviously it's like nearly 10 o'clock at night here in the UK. So I ate the biggest bowl of pasta before we came on this podcast, which is probably a bad idea. So I'm deciding from now on, I am going to make sure I eat way before, because it's like, it does make you feel much more like sluggish, doesn't it, when you eat something huge. And then you're like trying to be like, you. Like, oh, I just ate so many carbs.
Should get one of these.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I'd sleep for like 10 days.
Yeah, I definitely have to choose at what hour I drink it, because it will impair my sleep.
Yeah, because it's early there now, right?
Yeah, it's like almost 5.
Yep.
5 a.m.
No, 5 p.m. Yeah, we would not be up at 5 a.m.
No, we're behind you. We're not in front of you.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've got 7 minutes left, and we have another question that Nasha's passed my way from Jeffrey. And I'll just punch it in here so I can read it better. The question is, have you ever been sincere, but the other person took it as sarcasm? Which is a good question.
All the time. All the time.
And what do you do about it?
I have to say, no, seriously. Like that, I have to follow everything I say with, no, seriously, I'm not joking.
Mm-hmm.
Because people always think, because I'm the funny one, that people always assume that I'm joking. And I'm like, no, seriously.
Does it work?
Sometimes. And then people go, oh, okay, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm. So how do they know when you've slipped back into the sarcasm?
I don't think I ever slip out. But at the same time,
that's like a confusing conversation. I just said seriously, but I'm really going to be sarcastic. I mean, this is tough.
I mean, you can be sarcastic about a serious situation.
Oh my God.
Is there a therapist in the house? How about you, Kelly? Have you ever run into a situation where you were sincere, but the other person took it as sarcasm?
Probably not now, because I'm not as sarcastic as I used to be. But yeah, back in the day, I reckon, because I was so sarcastic all the time, I think people would have thought I was just joking when I wasn't. But I think now, the only thing I do get is maybe like where you give someone a compliment and they think you're like joking, or they can't take the compliment.
Yeah.
That's probably about it.
That's a great one, because there was another topic on Facebook on that very question, being able to receive. And I don't remember the exact question, but the gist of it is, I have trouble. I can give easily, but I have trouble receiving. What advice do you have? That was the general idea of it. And my response was, just start practicing it. When somebody takes you, when you're out to a restaurant with somebody, and somebody says, the person you're with says, I've got this. Don't say, oh no, I've got this. Say, thank you. Accept it. You know, they just delivered some benefits, some abundance to you. Accept it. Or somebody gives you a compliment. Say, oh no, don't just dismiss it. Say, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I deserve that. Thank you so much. You know, all the little opportunities that we get to receive little things, take advantage of them. Not because it's you taking advantage of everything, but because it's you learning how to receive. The best way to
Yeah.
learn how to receive is really to just practice receiving on the most simple levels.
Hmm. Yeah, I've
Definitely.
just learned recently how to take a compliment and say thank you. Because usually when people, give me a compliment, I'm like, I try. That's what I said. That's always my answer. But now I'm
Mhm.
starting to say, oh, thank you. But
Good.
it's so weird for me. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, we mentioned comfort zone before. You're crawling out of the comfort zone,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
which is a good thing.
I
You know,
guess.
you're breaking through you're breaking through your old boundary that wasn't serving you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the kind of thing you coach people on, Kelly? I mean, do you help encourage
Yeah.
people to get out of their comfort zones?
Yeah, I coach people on self-love a lot. That for me would fall under self-love, like being able to
Hmm.
accept a compliment. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I feel like when you move into that space of being able to accept a compliment, and then when you can actually really believe that that compliment's truth, then you're kind of moving into a different realm. And when you're able to, like, once you've and not necessarily talking about you, Alyx. I'm just talking about people in general. Like once people
Yeah.
have like really learned about self-love, then your manifestation becomes even bigger because you're moving into this new level of thinking that you now deserve these things that you're trying to manifest in. Until you
Hmm.
actually believe from a like a self-love perspective that you deserve them, you won't be able to manifest them.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a very good
Yeah,
point.
so it's a big thing that people actually miss when it comes to law of attraction, and they
Mm.
don't
Yeah.
realize that they've got that as being like a huge, huge block, especially when it comes to soulmate manifestation. That's like the biggest thing.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, sure, I can see that. And those
Yeah.
big blocks, they can hang in front of us for the longest time without us even noticing them. I mean, Jeffrey actually
Hmm.
has probably the last question of the show because we're kind of running out of time. But along this line, he says, "Is there anything in our life that we can't help if we really want to? Is there
No,
It's
anything that
that,
happens in our life that we can't really help even if we really want to?"
what does that
absolutely
mean?
not.
Sorry, I don't understand what that means. Sorry.
Like, for instance, is there anything? Law of attraction and deliberate creation is all about having control over our lives. So, what parts of our lives
Uh-huh.
don't we have control over?
Oh, okay, that's what he's saying, right? Okay. Um, no, I think we have control over all parts of our lives,
Hmm.
but we don't
It's
have control over our subconscious. So
mm,
our conscious mind, we have control over everything, but our subconscious mind is the thing that blocks us. So that's the thing that we don't have control over, and that's the part that we need to reprogram in order to rid any blocks or stopping us from manifesting in our dreams.
Well, isn't that a form of control, though, if you can reprogram it?
Yeah, I guess so, but I
well,
don't necessarily think that I think that some blocks for some people are so big that they might not actually unblock them in this lifetime.
mm,
But
Okay.
it just depends because there's lots of different things that you can do to try and unblock them. So it just depends on what journey someone's got and what path they're on as to whether or not they would unblock them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Cool. Okay. I think I'd also add that the one thing that you really can't control in your life is other people. I mean, you can try, but it's
Hmm.
Hmm.
invariably going to rebound on you in some negative way that you didn't have in mind. Um, the simple fact is everybody is a unique individual with their own willpower, their own wants.
Hmm.
And if you try to control them, you're going to be disappointed a lot of the time. And the rest of the time, you're going to be working really hard to control them. And it's
Oh,
not a
yeah,
very
that's so
good.
true.
Hmm.
So you're actually better off just respecting the fact that everybody has their own wishes and wants and just leaving it like that. You can control your own life, just don't try to control somebody else's life. And in fact, I think if more and more people followed that one, we wouldn't have most of the issues we have in the
Right.
world. 'Cause so much of it is about I
Hmm.
gotta control you. I don't like the way you're thinking. I don't like the way you're talking. I don't like this.
Well, that brings us back to the meme we were talking about earlier about that's none of my business though.
There it is. Well, that's a good way to.
Because you can't control other people, but you can control your reaction to the situation or the people.
Exactly. Well, that's a good way to wind it up then because we're done with our hour. But Kelly and Alex, thank you so much. This has been great. And I want to thank both of you because I was actually able to get a number of words in edgewise. I was really concerned about. No, I'm kidding. Just teasing you. Thank you guys both very much. And, we'll see you, Alex, on Friday and Kelly next Tuesday and maybe even another show. Yeah, we're still talking about that one, but we'll talk about that after the show.
Okay.
So we'll see you guys later. Well, thank you to our live audience as well who was listening in and giving your questions. We appreciate you too, and to our regular podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.